go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Share your name, pronouns, role, organization, and why you chose to be here with us today. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome. Welcome, y'all. Welcome, welcome. Hello. Come on in. Yes. Welcome. Yes. Welcome. Yay. Come on. Come on. Welcome. Welcome. So excited that you're here with us. Welcome. Welcome. Drop it in the chat. Let us know you're here. Share your name, pronouns, and why you are here with us today. Come on in, friends. Yes. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. We'll get started in a minute or so. I want to just leave it open. Come on in. Come on in, y'all. Yes, come on. We see you. Joining us. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. All right. We are excited. Hello. Welcome to Embracing Equity's webinar series, Real Talk, Real Action. We thank you for your beginning action of showing up here with us today. We host these webinars because we want to hold a space to talk about important issues, real issues. And we want to help each other not only talk about these issues, but move to action. Why action, you might ask? Because here's what we know: the grip that racism, oppression, inequity has on us as a collective can be crippling. It could cause us to freeze in our tracks and just feel hopeless. And so, again, I want to thank you all for being here with us, because we are going to stand firm in our shared values around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now is the time where our very classrooms are under attack for teaching in a way that we believe is critical, it's crucial, and that is teaching for equity. Specifically, we are watching and seeing the public attacks, both through executive orders and in classrooms, such as the classroom of a white teacher in Idaho who bravely, or maybe not so bravely, put up a poster in her room that simply says, "We belong here, all belong here." She was given a direct order to remove that poster. And so it's things like this that we're grappling with. We have so much to discuss here today. So I want to get into that discussion. And before we do, let's do a few introductions, okay? I'm Dr. Nicole Noel Evans, and I serve as the Director of Leadership at Embracing Equity. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Osage, the Missouri, and the Illinois Confederacy, also known as St. Louis, Missouri, here in the Midwest. Joining me today are two of my favorite partners in collaboration, Natani Lim and Dr. Katie Kitchens. I'll pass it to Natani to tell us a little bit more about her. Natani?
Thank you, Doc. Hi, everyone. It's really good to be in this space with you. So important for us to stay connected during the times we're in. So really excited to see you all and be here with you all. I am Natani Lim, and I am a project manager for Embracing Equity, and I'm based here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the unceded territories of our Pueblo people and Tewa-speaking people. My background is in early childhood and special education in early childhood. I have been in the field of education more than 20 years. So it is a passion, very important to me, something very special to me, near and dear. And I still advocate a lot for my educators, of course, and the work that I get to do. I'm a mom to a beautiful fourth grade daughter, and I also am a co-owner and run a breakdance studio in Albuquerque called the Dancing Turtles. So just very invested in my community here and across a bunch of different places. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Katie.
Thank you, Natani. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Super excited to be here with y'all today. Excited to see some familiar names in the chat from St. Kate, see some folks from Austin, some folks from Minnesota. Thank you all for being here with us today so that we can all chat together. I have been an educator in education for over 15 years now, mostly in Montessori settings, and just finished up my PhD last year, where I looked at how white families are trying to raise anti-racist white children. So I'm really grateful to be here with y'all. And also I see we have some teacher educators in the chat. So excited to share how we've been doing some of this work specifically in teacher education programs too. Natani's going to share a bit. So let's dive in.
All right. We are going to dive into the topic of teaching for equity. But before we do, I want to hear a little bit more from our audience. Let's get our audience engaged. Here's what I want to ask you, audience. Please drop it in the chat. What does it feel like when a classroom is rooted in equity? I'd like for you to drop one word, a phrase, or even an emoji in the chat that captures what equity feels like in a learning space for you, for your students, or your team. So come on, let us see. What does it feel like? One word, a phrase, or emoji. What does it feel like in a learning space? What does it feel like? Let's see what our audience, warm, joy, a big group hug, safe, comforting. That's in there twice. Happy. Yes. Keep them coming, y'all. Yes. Yes. All of these things. Comfort, connection. I love that, Angie. Yes. Oh my gosh. Comfort, safe. There it is again. Welcoming, safe. Lots of safe. Thank you, Gianna. Thank you, Anya. Yes, tight. Ooh, Katarina, tight. Happiness. Yes, all of those things. I love it. Yes, keep them coming. What does it feel like for you, for your students, even your team? Great. Keep them coming, y'all. All right. I'm going to turn to Natani and Katie. Thank you both for joining today as well. And so let's start here. Everyone here, you and I, for many years, all three of us, right? We're in the education field. And as we know, When you walk into the field, there's the approved curriculum, right? Most educators walk in as new educators. You're given lots of development and training. They give you the book and say, this is the math curriculum, or this. If you're Montessori, you have your albums with you. You've been given that when you walk in the door, or even in your teacher prep programs, right? You're taught how to teach, right? The subjects, which I always push on that because we're really not teaching subjects, we're teaching children, which is why teaching for equity is so important. We're teaching human beings, right? So equity is newer in the curriculum, right? When I was a teacher, when I was learning how to become a teacher in 1995, yeah, 1990 in the 1900s, right? That wasn't a part of what we were taught to do, right? And so with equity being newer in the curriculum, and with the climate, we can't ignore the hostile climate that we're in. The climate that we're currently in, it's telling us that DEI is not valued. In fact, it's not only telling us that, we're seeing and feeling that DEI is under immense attack. So, as I talked about that teacher, that poster, she was told, bring it down, right? And so, if a poster that says you belong here is asked to be, what message is that sending? And so, the question that I want us to dig deeper into and just start to uplift is, how and why is it important to teach for equity? And let's, as we go through, talk about what should educators be doing right now in this current climate, knowing that and with the understanding that it is so important to teach for equity.
Thanks, Doc. I think for me, when I'm noticing a lot just amongst like my daughter's teacher and then teachers that are taking our cohorts in New Mexico, and something to really recognize is there is a real fear, right?
Mm,
There's a real legitimate fear, nervousness, anxiety, where I feel like in December, we kind of anticipated, okay, it's going to be very different. And then now to be here and say like, wow, there's certain things I can't say. There's certain words, like if the kids go back and tell parents, like, so I think to mention that piece is there's a purpose for that, right? Like
mm,
the media doesn't just blindly say the things and do these executive orders and are performative for no reason. There's always an intention with it, right? And a lot of it is to directly influence and impact people's livelihoods and to create
yeah,
chaos and create fear.
yeah,
So for me, I think to combat that is to really hold firm and grounded that now more than ever, because of where we're at, it's like sticking to these things. And
yeah,
if in your classroom you need to call it getting along, classroom connections, like,
yes,
I think for us teaching for equity is just a given. I think for a lot of teachers, it's, well, multiculturalism is happening or it's diverse. And so it's happening. Being equitable is different, right? It's an intention to really ensure you're creating a lot of ways of being in the classroom for many children, many students. So those things I feel meet kids where they're at and does not have to be in this fear-based place, right?
yes, yes.
And I think there's still going to be, like us, a lot of organizations, community organizations, grassroots folks, even big organizations that are still going to hold very, very firm to
Mm,
work that we're going to do, because we can't just be gone. I think that will be even more fearful for a lot of people to not have community to know where to lean on. So I think, for me, it is really important as an educator before this time, for the future, for now, that equity, and Doc, you say this so well, it is not the salt and pepper, for our students, like, oh, we're just going to dabble in it a little bit and like see if our kids belong sometimes. It
yes,
is the plate, right? It is
mm,
the plate of
like,
which everything has to stand. Like
yeah,
academics, curriculum, and all of that, to your point, miss the mark a lot of times because it is purely about academics. It is not creating a whole
mm,
child or a whole person. It is really just filling them, right, with all of this stuff that they're
mm,
supposed to rotely remember. And
right,
so I think taking that into consideration is, yes, we're going to have a lot of anxiety and fear. And to that teacher in Idaho who was like, okay, I'll take it down, and came back the next day is like, no, I'm going to put it up.
Yes. Yes.
Why would I not tell my children that they don't belong here? Like,
Yes.
so I think there's going to be moments right now as teachers to link together and
Yes.
connect in spaces like this, and probably a lot more intentionally than we were before.
Yes.
We don't get exhausted and we don't get really full of fear.
Yes. To that point, and then I want to hear from you, Dr. Katie, as well. I remember there have been shifts, particular shifts in time. And so I remember what we're calling the anti-racist summer of 2020. That's what I call it, right? Where everybody, there was this shift and people were combing back through their mission statements, and they were taking the brave stance of saying, we're looking at that and we're adding, and we're putting a stake in the ground and saying, we are going to center anti-racism. That was such a big, powerful collective shift. And now it feels like the shift is going the other way. I'm hearing organizations saying, we're going through our website, and any of the words that seem to be connected to this work, we're scrubbing them, we're erasing, we're cleaning them up. We're still going to do the work, but now we're feeling like we're having to clean it up. And so thinking about that, it is just it is devastating in some ways, in saying that we know that people are committed to it, but there are some risks now. There are risks in coming out to say that we want this organization to be more equitable. We want to center anti-racism. We want children and people of the global majority to thrive, and we need everyone to do that work. So what comes to mind for you, Dr. Katie?
Thanks, Dr. Evans. Thanks, Natani. I think there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about. One is just to speak to what you were just saying, Doc, is like, it is disheartening. And when we know our history, this is predictable. When you go back and you look at the 1960s and 70s and Chicano movements and the American Indian movement and Black Power and liberation movements, and then we see the backlash that happened in the 1980s, right?
Yes.
And then we see this sort of resurgence again in the 90s. And then after September 11th, we saw this punishment of academics and of activists. And then we see the rising again. So this is predictable in a lot of ways. And people have resisted. Indigenous folks have been resisting since the arrival of colonizers on this land. Black folks have been resisting since forced enslavement on this land, and before they were ever forced to come here. Yes. And so we know that we've been watching and we've been seeing this resistance. And I also want to say, there have also been places for anti-racist white folks in those movements as well, who worked alongside. There's a place for all of us in this movement. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming, like we can't imagine a new future. But, women weren't allowed to have bank accounts without male co-signers until 1974.
Yes.
So, and we can't even imagine a difference there. Folks who, so these sorts of changes that maybe we're like are insurmountable, they can change, they can shift. We've seen them change and shift. And I want to reiterate also what Natani was saying to the importance of community.
Yes.
In 2019, I was pushed out of a school because of my commitment to anti-racism and after coming out as non-binary. And part of the mistake that I made in that situation, or part of what I, didn't, I shouldn't say the mistake that I made, but what I could have done is I could have made sure that I had community in that school and organized for how was I going to show up and do this work. Because I want to acknowledge the fear that people are feeling is real. I continue to have that family from 6 years ago following me. And it's continuing to follow me. So it is a real fear. And when you have that support of community, when you can organize, we have that power. They can't have schools without teachers. right? And we
Yes.
don't have to proactively acquiesce. We don't have to just throw our hands up in the air and say, I'm going to do it because I'm scared. There are ways that we can be like icebergs, right? Slow and
Mhm.
steady and stubborn, where you just see this top part, but that what's happening down below is where we're asking, like encouraging those critical question asking, building that connection. We don't have to clean out our classroom libraries and make sure that there's
Mm,
only anything about the quote
mm,
unquote American Revolution in there, right?
yes.
We
Yeah.
don't have to we don't have to act before we're forced to act, right? And then once
Yeah.
we're starting to be forced, then we can resist even further. And so I guess building that community, finding that connection, because that's the only way we're going to make it through this.
I love that. So I'm hearing from both you and Atani. We've been here before. We've had acts of resistance, and lean on your community. Those are some strategies that we can do here. Yep, don't obey in advance. Come on, Christine is talking to me. Talk to us in the chat, y'all. If you're on here, you've got some thoughts, you've got some ideas. Even if you're just saying, yes, this makes sense to me. Yes, this is a webinar that we're the panelists are talking to one another, but we want you all to join in on this conversation as well. So come on, y'all, join in with us. So we've talked about some strategies. Let's talk a little bit more about what strategies educators can do this work in general. We're going to get to our teaching for equity strategies because we have 12 strategies that we recommend that people use and that we teach and so that people can do. But let's talk bigger. Let's talk a little bit more. What else or if we're ready, yeah, what are the other big things? I love community. I love don't obey in advance. I love yeah, find your people. And what else would you all recommend that people do?
I think for me, and again going back to the community, and then I'll probably link that into some strategies as a teacher, like for myself, just my experiences.
Yes.
But I did kind of say this in the chat that there is a feeling of like less risk taking when
Mm,
it's like a team of you, right? So if it's like all the kindergarten teachers have a project they want to do, it's maybe really seeped in civil rights or it's seeped in something, right? It's like, yeah, then do it, because there's a lot of you that are able to be in community, to like work with your children, to work
yes.
with their families, and like be really transparent as to the reason of those things. And so the community piece, I think, extends like a lot. Like a lot of things
Mm,
move because of community. And
love
I
that.
think we're also, at least in my city in here in Albuquerque, we have a lot of family schools, and we have a lot of like these wraparound resources that come from community schools, lots of efforts that help, like not just our children coming to school, but the families coming to school, right? Is
Mm,
an equity piece, because those pieces, these programs that kind of get initiated and have to sustain, is when we think of, I don't really like using Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because it actually comes from a Native American perspective. The Blackfeet have a very different take as to like your safety and your
yes.
family needs to be taken care of first before you
Yes.
can take care of others, right? And so that's the same thinking here, is if we're thinking in terms of community, we I've been there myself. Like, I'm just focused on my students, that's it. And in preschool, it's a lot easier in early childhood to make those connections with families, because that's just how it's got to be. Like, you're doing a lot of things together.
Yes.
As you get older, and now
Yes.
being a parent, and I see how it can start, there's like a rupture, right? You just start kind of leaning out a little bit
Yes.
more. Also, your child might not want you to be involved as much, or it's kind of like, yeah, you're figuring that part out. But for me, I think that piece really needs to be looked at when we talk about equity strategies. Like,
Mm,
what are you offering families? What are parents able to do? Like, if they can't do those things, how are you meeting them? Like, how are you able to bring community in if they can't get to these resources? Like,
mm,
believe for me in early childhood, like as I said, like that's just a norm. It's not something that we even have to really think much about. It's like, oh, I have to connect them to this and that and this, and I'm going to figure out how to do that. And I think as we get, up into the upper grades, it's like, well, they're going to have to do that. Well, that's sometimes a lot to ask, right?
yes.
Um, And I think for myself too, the equity, part with community is sometimes even trying to like destigmatize some things for parents, like and for
Mm,
families and for kids. Like we can't always be fearful of these entities, which in a lot of ways have made us fearful. And even now, I mean, there's like a lot of advocacy we're going to have to do around police officers coming in. Like my kiddos, I remember being in my program in Romeoville outside of Chicago. They did not really want to see police. I could
mm,
bring in firefighters, I could bring in, chefs or other people, but the police part,
yeah.
that was hard. And so it's like, how are you matching that energy to like know your community? How are you matching to know the strategies you're using are like really honing in on everybody and not just like one particular family. And I think that also has to do another strategy I think of is like our biases, right? Like on for us in embracing equity, we do a lot of work on social identities and thinking about how we're showing up. And
Yes.
I did that not beginning of teaching. And as I've grown, I've learned like I got to check myself a lot of times.
Yes.
I can't be showing up like this because I'm thinking this way. I'm only really centering 2 to 3 kids, and I'm not thinking
Yes.
about the rest of my kids. So when I think of
Yes.
equity in that way, those strategies become a lot easier to use, right? So again, you have to find your folks to be in a collective. If you want to move those, want to move the needle, you have to know your community, you have to know your families in order to create that equity.
Yes.
And you yourself have to know where your blind spots are. Like
Yes.
what are you always have them. And so you're
Yes.
going to repeat the same harmful stuff in a classroom by not being equitable because you're not trying to figure out where are my gaps? What am I missing? I know I'm missing a part of this, but like what is it? Um, so
Yeah.
I'll pass
Love that. So I heard community, families are included in that community, both to bring in to be a part of the work and both to think about how do I bring resources to the families. So extending that community and building the capacity to do this work together. I heard that loud and clear. Thank you. So as we think about that, um, what are some things, I talked at the beginning about with the executive orders, with the pendulum swinging the other way, right? From when we started from the anti-racism, this has long been started, but one of the defining points was the anti-racist summer of 2020, right? And now feeling a big swing the other way. And I talked about us feeling hopeless. And so, what are some things that are giving hope right now as we're thinking about strategies? Dr. Katie, would you weigh in on this one?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Evans. I think that part of what's giving me hope right now is seeing how many, the people who are here with us today, the people who are in classrooms at the university level, at the K-12 level, with our smallest learners who are resisting, with the families who are resisting, like what Natani was saying, they can't bar families from our classrooms. So when we
Mm,
have families coming in and being able to share about their own lives, like that's a way of affirming children in their whole humanity. Um, and wondering how educators, I see Molly in the chat, wondering how educators navigate staying in the workforce while not directly breaking a gag order. We can get creative. Okay, so when we've talked about, for instance, like diversifying, this is one of our activities in TFE, diversifying texts. We don't have to choose texts that represent a variety of backgrounds that specifically talk about this is an anti-racist text, this is a pro-queer text. We can find books that show characters living their lives that don't say anything about race, racism, heterosexism, cissexism, and that is still a way for children to be able to see themselves and
yeah,
also to see people who have identities that are different than theirs, right? So we
yeah,
have to get creative and think about how are we, and we know there are going to be some of us who have positionalities that mean that we can take bigger risks, right?
yes, yes,
Like for me in the classroom environment where I was in, we were living with my parents at the time. My partner was also employed, so I was able to take bigger risks because of the reality of my financial situation. If you're in the Bay Area in San Francisco, that's a lot different than being in rural Nebraska, right? So the
Yes.
choices that we like, knowing our positionalities, knowing what we can do, we can judge what kind of risks can I take, am I able to take in those places, right?
Yes.
Mirrors and thank you, Casey. Yeah, mirrors and windows for students to understand new perspectives. So
Yes.
even if I can't directly go through a lesson like I might do when I worked at CARES Children's Learning Center, and we were like, here's the 4 levels of racism, here's the 4 levels of anti-racism.
Yes.
I can't explicitly do that. I can figure out ways, how do I still disrupt white dominant narratives, right? Straight dominant narratives. There are ways that I can do it, and I can get even more creative about it when I'm in partnership with people who have identities that are different than mine.
Yes.
Because they
Yes.
can see what I can't see. I
Mhm.
have those, what Natani was talking about, those blind spots around white dominant narratives. Well, am I in relationship with people, the global majority, who can say, like, an example of a book, We Are Kind by Monique Gray Smith. I just got it with our colleague Carly while we were in the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe's museum. And it's a book just about being kind, but all of the characters or many of the characters in the book are Indigenous, and it's from an Indigenous perspective. And
I
so
love
it's
that.
just about being kind. So if anybody comes and is, if you have a very rigid administrator and they're coming in, it's just a book about being kind.
Yes, I
Right.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I
So
love that.
this is the
I share this story often. One of my most favorite observation of a teacher as I was a principal, Mr. Pat pulled out the text and he said, this is the approved text that we need to read for this social studies class. Before we do it, before we read it, and it was an anthology, it had a lot of story. He opened it up and he said, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to examine the table of contents. Who are the authors? Who's missing? Whose stories are we missing? And they said, oh, they're all white men. And so he said, yes, we're going to have this same perspective. We're going to add this text and this text and this text.
Mm-hmm.
So having a variety of authors that represented different perspectives, it's the windows and the mirrors. And so just as you talked about, Dr. Katie, that's what came to mind for me. So educators, there's a way. And let's not forget, one of the things that I also wanted to mention, it's working. If it wasn't working, then there wouldn't be this big push against it. So stay in the trenches, y'all. What else? There's some other things that are giving us hope, some late breaking things. Natani, I'm ready for you to hop in there. What's giving us hope? This is a big one, y'all.
Yes.
This is a big one.
So for us here in New Mexico, we'll drop a link here in a little bit so you can kind of read up on it. We have a very, very important case, the Yazzie Martinez case, the lawsuit against the New Mexico Public Education Department, which was granted and the plaintiffs won. It's 2 sets of families, but yet underneath is nestled other sets of families that have, their children are not having their needs met at school, and they're not meeting the their potential and being successful in school, particularly our dual language or bilingual learners, our special education, to students with special education needs, and also for Indigenous students and children of color. So just yesterday, super hopeful for this, the hearing came back again because there was a motion to address the court again for NMPED for lack of accountability. Like, yes, in 2018, you said it was, we are not meeting the needs. And now we are in 2023 and 2024 is when everything kind of started up again to ask for a plan. We are now in 2025 and we're asking, what is the plan? Like, what is your accountability measures? So the plaintiffs won again yesterday. So the judge ruled for the state of New Mexico that students are still not getting what they need, and that families and community have say in how this plan is going to roll out. And the judge was like, yeah, they're not meeting the needs. And so we need to make sure that this is going to move forward in a way pretty quickly so that the PED has to abide. So for me, and huge shout out to Wilhelmina Yazi for all of her strength and fierceness and steadfastness of like making sure that our students are always on top here in New Mexico. And it's just a very proud moment because you just never know with lawsuits that if they're going to say no, the PED is doing what they need to do. And I think for all of us in community, all of us that are working with children, which is all of us, not just us as educators, that's the whole community needs to be working for the efforts of children. It just really solidifies, like for here in New Mexico, we care about our kids. Our kids are number one. They will continue to be number one. And it just, to me, shows that our with our nation that needs to be on top all the time. So huge win. I think, there's an article in there. Lots of organizations help to do this. Shout out to Transform Education New Mexico, the Center for Law and Poverty. There's a lot of amazing efforts going with this and is bringing us together. So again, that's another piece of the hope is a lot of us are coming together for this work, and that's awesome. Means a lot.
That's that community that you talked about. Congratulations. That is a big win, not only for New Mexico, it's a big win for everybody because that's what we need. We need one case to set the precedence for helping that accountability. And I love that this is what that will be doing. All right. I started off asking our viewers a question, and now I want to ask you to. What does an equitable classroom feel like for students, for you? What could educators be doing, particularly in this time, to ensure that all of the words that they put, warm, supportive, connections, community, they gave us so much to think about, our viewers. Thank you, viewers. And what you two, I want to hear from some experts, and Dr. Katie and Natani, you qualify. What would that feel like to you? What should we see? What supports can teachers be doing? And again, particularly in today's time.
I'm thinking about this, from each of us, from our own positionality. And so as a queer person, as a white person, what does this mean? And I think, for all children, it means being affirmed in our full humanity, to have all of the endless, one of the quotes that I love best from Maria Montessori is that she says that when a new child is born, our attitude should not be one of compassion, but rather one of reverence, that a spiritual being has been confined to limits perceptible to us. And that's, I know, and that's how I feel being around children, like this boundless possibility, this being who, it's, to me, is one of the most sacred callings to get to be with children, and for them to be affirmed in their full humanity, to be, to the extent possible, insulated from these systems that seek to dehumanize them. Like, what can we do in our classrooms to make them just feel like we see them, that we hear them, that we're there with them? When I think about like what I would have hoped for as a white child, would have been to have examples of anti-racist white adults, to have an example of what it would mean to grow up as a child who was racially literate.
Come on.
We did know there were other options, right? Because when I first really started reckoning in my, late adolescence, early adulthood with like, I haven't been educated in any of this. I was angry. I was angry. How did I make it all the way through that much education and nobody really had stopped me? And that was so out of alignment with the person that I hope to be. So what I want for white children is they have the opportunity to be full people, right? When I did my dissertation research, I talked to a lot of the pushback we get from conservatives when they talk about white kids is they're going to feel bad about themselves. Yes. And I had a 5-year-old child who I said, after spending, this weekend with her explaining colonization to me and talking about, the enslavement of African folks and how that was not kind and that was wrong. And she told me, I was asking her, we've talked a lot about like stuff that white people have done that's bad. Like, how does that make you feel? Do you feel bad about it? And she said, no. Why would I feel bad about it? Because if I didn't know what was wrong, then how could I do things differently?
Come on.
And
Yes,
so
come on.
if we support children in feeling their full humanity, and this is, I'm talking about white kids, but, kids who are going to grow up and be cisgender and straight also, to not have, like, to be able to show up as accomplices as well. Like, if we support children in feeling support in their full humanity, then they have that embodied experience so that
Yeah.
when they start looking out of themselves, right, when they move out of that like 0 to 6, more like my direct family, my direct feelings, and start really understanding this more abstract, like, wait a second, what do you mean these things happen in the world? They feel it's wrong because they've felt themselves being affirmed. And what do you mean that there are places where that doesn't happen?
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. What about you, Natani? And I also, you know, I'm pushing like in times now because we're hearing about ICE possibly showing up at the schoolhouse doors. What should teachers do? What should teachers be thinking and feeling? Like, I don't know. Speak to that. Can you speak to that? I get questions about that from people. What would you say?
Yeah, I think for me, the part of the extension off of what Dr. Kitty's saying is really that part of, if you're creating a culture of belonging in your classroom,
Yeah.
we're making sure that everybody knows that they are affirmed, that they're of value, that they don't have to. And the modeling for me becomes like a teacher needs to also do that too, right? Like, I remember telling my little ones, if I made a mistake, I made a mistake. Like, I botched this lesson, scratch it, right? Like, we're going to do something else. So I think there's a lot of like what we model, what we're warming up to, what we're open to. And this also comes as a part of being that resource too for things like ICE raids. They're, trying to show up to schools, like, do the administrators know what their rights are? There's a lot. The ACLU is a really good resource to be able to access like what the rights are. KnowYourRightsAlso.org is going to be another resource to be able to just look into like general things like what you can and cannot say. New Mexico and Albuquerque, various places now, there's like big posters or signs that say like, if this happens, these are the things you say. A lot of us are aware, more so towards, of course, the south of us, in Cruces and things like that around the borders is a lot more active. And so I think when children feel safe, regardless of their status, right, citizenship, we are a huge state here in New Mexico for our Dreamers, for the Dreamers Act. So like, I feel really blessed that we're in a place that is really about making sure that we're a safe haven and that we have our community taken care of. That's not to say there's going to be our rural areas and ways about us that people are going to try it, right? And so I think that part becomes a lot easier for families or folks to ask for help if that culture of belonging is established, if their child is excited and happy to be like, that's always the determining factor, right? If your children are excited to get up in the morning, to be in your classroom, me, like, I know I'm doing what I need to do, right? Like my community is in this classroom community, we're doing what we need to do. But I feel like that it does have a ripple effect, right? So you're able to like be able to give some resources, to give some points, to give some, help when you can, when it's, when there's like a rapport. And a lot of that is so based on relationships. I think that's the thing too. Like, yes, it's community. Equity is really built though on the understanding of creating relationships and sustaining them. I am so honored that I can still, like, half a dozen or more of my students, I see them now as like college students, right? I still have communications with their families. Even in this digital age, which is phenomenal because my kiddos back in Illinois, I can see them. I think there's something to that when we say about equity, like, yes, we can, pull everything apart. Really, I'm if it's a family I don't really know, and maybe my things don't always connect with them, but I'm still building that relationship in an effort to be
Yes.
like, well, you're going to get to know me and like what I do. And if it's really different than yours, at least you get some experience with it.
Exactly.
That creates equity. Like that
Yeah.
creates some learning around those pieces where before they probably would not have ever thought to go there, right? And
Right.
vice versa. Like we have to have sometimes these uncomfortable conversations or
Yes.
curiosity, like to Dr. Katie's point, like I'm going to be curious about this versus being defensive and like
Yeah.
assuming anything. So to me, I think a lot of those parts are really what make your classroom an equitable place. And also that ability for when these kinds of things in our climate are happening within our nation, where deportations are happening and,
Mm.
and even it breaks my heart, like children getting deported.
Mm.
So, and people are now calling that child trafficking. That's not deportation.
Come on.
3-year-old and a 6-year-old are taken from their family, or
Come
a
on.
mother is taken and deported. How are we then saying that that's not trafficking or kidnapping anymore? Like, it does
Come
not
on.
even fall within the realm of deportation, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
again, I think part of me has to say this, like, for my people, for my experiences, for coming from a family of immigrants, like, there's so much I can get into there, right? All the things that are said that are false, that
Yeah.
are wrong, and that again are seeped in fear. So the more that we can combat that in the classroom, the more that we're not avoiding it, but we're saying, but we can figure this out. We can figure this out together, right?
Yeah.
That's to me the most important part.
I love that. One of the things that makes me hearken back to is in my to what you're saying as educators, when they're saying, what can I do? You're going to create a to your point, an environment of belonging. And don't forget, when I was taking my teacher training, they gave us a word, and that word was in loco parentis. And what it means is in place of the parent. If I have a child in my room, I'm going to teach them these things because I am in this moment possibly acting in place of their parent. I'm going to give them equity. I'm going to give them the best things that they need to survive in this world. If ICE shows up, I'm going to protect them as if I am their parent. I'm not letting them go. And so yeah, they're our babies. They're all our babies, to your point, Natani. Listen, if they show up in loco parentis, you're gonna pretend that that is your very own child. If and it is your child, right? There's no pretending about it, but you're going to protect them as if they are your child. All right. So we've talked. Thanks, y'all. This is
Just real quick, can I
yes.
just say,
Go ahead, Dr. Katie. Go ahead.
yeah, you can directly teach your students also. I will not talk to you until my parents and a lawyer is present.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't have to talk to you. That's their right. They have a right to not talk to anybody. So you can practice with them in your class. I will not talk to you until my parents and a lawyer are present.
Thank you, Dr. Katie. That's very specific, and we need that strategy. Speaking of strategies and specific strategies, we have done some research and some work. Embracing Equity has worked hard actually to develop some supports for teachers who really do want to center and begin to cultivate an equitable classroom. So Natani and Dr. Katie, can you talk to us about these 12 principles of and strategies for teaching for equity?
Katie, do you want me to help me fill this in? Okay.
Well, maybe, Natanya, if you could start too with how we've implemented it too.
Yes.
We have some
I will
teacher
You
educators
can
here
begin.
also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I can speak to New Mexico, of the
Okay.
work that we're doing based on our grant here, which has been so exciting. And actually, it was not part of the big goal. It was like one of our smaller goals to say, hey, how are we helping our pre-service teachers that are going to be going into a classroom? How are we helping maybe some teachers that have been out of the classroom setting or out of the training PD for a little bit, and they don't really know how to get back into understanding equity, right? What these equity and equitable foundations are. So for us in New Mexico, we've built it into our higher ed institutions teacher like prep, right? Our coursework. And so we have quite a bit, 5 or 6 institutions within the state of New Mexico that are piloting it, have piloted it, kind of our original one, point one. Now we're on to the second version, which is amazing. Lots of amazing feedback from faculty, from students, what they were really getting out of it, what maybe we were missing. And so it's become it's our Teaching for Equity micro credential is actually what it is, which we're going to give you all information on that because we do have a national space to join. But here in New Mexico, our point is saying if you don't have these, 4 principles, which we do have them based on 4 principles, and huge shout out to Dr. Katie and to Carly for this amazing work on all of this. But we have our foundational knowledge, knowing ourselves, learning each other, building a brave learning space, and then pulling that all together into like a critical action step. So I have a personal experience with it because I do teach early childhood at CNM here in New Mexico, and I love being able to teach students. And I made it as like a project, a part of our course, and so kind of lighten the load a little bit with the coursework part, but like really try to say let's build community in this space because it is an asynchronous program, and huge success. In the beginning, takes people a little while to warm up because we ask them to go through the glossary of terms, which can feel like a lot if you're coming in with like a very little bit of context of understanding like anti-racist or anti-bias or racial justice work. And by the time we got to the end, I will say as a professor, and again, big ups to my CNM students in my early childhood program, they were so vulnerable and so willing to share with each other and just like say like, yeah, I've done that too, and it wasn't the best thing, and like now I'm learning that this is what I need to do, which is exactly what we're trying to get to. A practice where maybe you might not ever see these, folks because I had 2 online classes, but yet they're able to support one another in this learning and unlearning. And, some of it's messy, some of it's vulnerable. Some people are a little bit more, open than others, but yet they're still gaining a lot of perspective of each other's experiences. So that's been such a huge glow for New Mexico. And I have to just shout out my state because the one thing for me too with yesterday, Doc and Dr. Katie, is New Mexico loves one another. There's this sense of like this huge community for us. And we know that like all of our skin is in the game. So like we have to show up, and it's a very different energy because people want to at least try it. There's never like a, don't do that, I can't do that. It's like, okay, I'm going to try it. If it's for our kids, is it to be better? So I'll stop. Dr. Katie, you want to get into the exact principles?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Natani. Yeah.
But before you hop in, that's a theme. I want everyone on here who's looking now, who will view it later. The theme is community together. This work is too big to do alone. Don't be siloed. Don't close that classroom door and do it by yourself. So Dr. Katie's going to get more into what we mean when we say this work. What people say that a lot. This work, this work. What do you mean? What is this work?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Evans. Thanks, Natani. Yeah, so we have 4 overarching principles, which Dr. Nicole Noel put into the chat. So first, this idea of knowing ourselves and knowing each other. Our first foundational knowledge, so like history of race and racism. And then within that context, knowing our own unique intersecting identities, and then how do we build relationship across difference? Building a brave learning space. So how do we do that work of creating safe, brave, I'm just going to scroll up and look at all these words that everybody dropped in: connected, comfortable, happy, joyful, respectful environments. How do we do that together? And then also, how do we take action? So with all of this learning that we're doing, how do we actually do that in our classrooms? And so underneath each of these principles, we have specific activities where we dive into that development of self. And we're also working on developing companion activities that you can directly do with children. And so and also supporting teachers, and you all are experts right? You know your students, you know, so with this knowledge about these principles, how do you then extend
Mm,
this, what we did? So if we create community agreements as adults, what does that look like in your classroom? You know your
mm,
kids, you know the tenets of early childhood education, you know about philosophy, what and theory. What do we do with children then? And really, because we don't just want to hand everything to
yeah,
folks, we want, because also we know that adult learners are come with their own expertise and knowledge that we want to honor. We
yeah,
can't be in everybody's classrooms,
yeah.
so we get to have a little peek in there through this work that we get to do together. So that's some of what hopefully, if you all join us, and if you want to partner as teacher education programs, we're excited to think about that work as well. So
All right, that's awesome. Awesome, awesome. So, before we go, we don't have long, but if there are any questions that our viewers have for us, if you drop them in the chat, we'll answer those. But we do have our, hello. um Sorry about that. We have our principles: foundational knowledge, knowing ourselves and learning each other's number 2, building that brave learning space number 3, and then critical action. Remember, real talk, real action. And so if you join us in this teaching for equity course, what I'm hearing, I'm just reiterating what I'm hearing, Dr. Katie, you're going to learn some things, and then there's going to be some companion activities. So not only learning for yourself, professional development, doing the work for yourself, because you got to start here, but then we're going to give you some things so that you can implement them into your classroom. So we'd love to see if anybody on this call, on this webinar, would like to join us. Please let us know. We are in this together. We're linking arms. We are not going to allow that fear and that out and out attack keep us from doing what we know we need to do for our students as we are teaching and growing students, not teaching subjects, teaching students. So I'm excited to, work with folks and to continue to learn. So I just will ask, as we close, Natani, Dr. Katie, final words maybe of encouragement for educators, as we get ready to end this webinar. What would you offer?
You have to rest. You have to
Mm,
not dive into all the stuff that's going to try to inundate your life every day. Because I know for me, and just the way that my parents have raised me, teachers are like political entities. Like, we don't want to be, but we're like civil rights political entities, like in spaces, doing a lot, holding a lot. So we are this, like, as Doc said, these safe places and spaces for our children and families, yet there's all the other stuff, right? So take it day by day. Don't try to overwhelm yourself with doing it all. And just to reiterate, find your people, stay connected, find spaces like us, and we continue to do these monthly webinars, but you can also just reach out to us and find the other folks that you need to connect with. And I think that part is going to fill the bucket versus really thinking in this deficit. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow?
I love it.
That's what they want. And I don't think we should ever give them what they want, because resistance means to also find joy, and children
Yes,
are joy. So
they,
be around them and do it for them, because that in itself is an act of resistance, and it's an important one.
I love that. Thank you. Dr. Katie.
yeah, thank you, Natani. Thank you, Dr. Evans. I just want to say that this all there's nothing else. There's
Mm,
nothing beyond our children. There's nothing beyond building community with each other.
mm,
There's nothing beyond living out a type of love that's revolutionary and radical and resist these systems that try to dehumanize us. So, take rest and also know that we don't have another choice.
mm.
You know what we're fighting for. And kind of to that, we are really trying to do our best to continue partnering directly with schools. And we're also hoping to continue to offer some more national offerings for folks where schools might not be able to provide spaces or offerings. So please, we would be not telling you the truth if we didn't say this is also, a challenging time for our work, as you might be able to imagine.
Mhm.
So please, as you're able to share our work, if you are
Please.
able to in any way, right, to donate, to connect us with people who we want
Yes.
to be in this work alongside you, doing it with you. So thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you all so much. And my
Thanks,
parting words
everyone.
is yes to everything that they said. And don't forget, our liberation is bound together. So join us, link arms with us. Real talk, real action. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. Bye.